Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Understable Discourse and this week's edition of Chain Reaction, where we take a look at the event of the previous weekend, the insights, the course, the players, and all that. And we're talking this time about the MVP Open. Let's get into it. Now, this past weekend, we were out at Maple Hill in Massachusetts, one of the best courses on the planet, the best course rated by UDisc in the United States. And we had the MVP Open go down. And it was a pretty dramatic event from start to finish, I would say, for both the MPO and the FPO. And this was the professional scene's last chance to get points or to put themselves in a position to win wildcard spots to make it into the Pro Tour Championship. And you know what? I got to give the Disc Golf Network some credit. They did a pretty good job of showcasing the players who were on the bubble, trying to get in, and having a camera on their card when it was necessary. In the past, it's been kind of hit or miss. This year, I think they did a pretty good job of that, trying to talk about the players, but also to keep us focused on the action at hand, because we had some extremely competitive, races going down in FPO and MPO, and also some drama on that wild card cut line. So to be able to juggle both, props to them. We said that we were going to see whether or not they could do it, and they did it pretty well, for the most part. Before we get into the actual results, I like to look at, the breakdown of kind of how the course went, especially, considering the changes made from year to year. And, we talked about some of the big changes, specifically right off the rip. We have the change to hole 1, where the basket was moved back a bit into the protected area back there. And I would say across the board, it didn't really have too much of an effect from year to year. Although for the FPO side, it did pretty much eliminate most of any birdie attempts that they had, especially in that number 1 position back into the back. You have the position out front, which is right behind the lake, or right behind the pond. That is what it is. But that set in position, last year we were looking at a birdie rate of roughly 12%. This year we were lucky to have anyone birdie that hole. In fact, I believe there's only one birdie on the entire weekend. That birdie coming from, surprise, surprise, Paige Pierce, someone with plenty of power to get down there and the ability to get in there. So I would say that was definitely a difficult change for them. Now, over on the MPO side, we can see this hole kind of had a similar-ish effect, where it went from 33% birdie percentage last year to 16% this year. Not a humongous change, but enough to definitely talk about. And I would say that arguably one of the things that the MPO field does a bit better than the FPO field is make adjustments mid-event to holes. Seeing a 15% drop off, it's not incredibly surprising with the different pin position, because especially with, how foggy it was during the first round and how difficult the hole played in some places, it makes sense to see the birdie rate drop off a little bit like that. Now, the next major change that happened to the course was specifically on hole 9, and this change really for anyone is for the FPO field, because they moved their tee pad location from where the tee pad has always been positioned on hole 9, and they moved it into the tunnel that the MPO players have been throwing down now for a few years. And I would say off the top, I thought that was going to make the whole play a decent bit harder, and quite frankly, it really didn't matter too much. We're looking like last year with the different pin positions, we're looking at 16% birdie rate and about a 53% par rate for pin position 2, and this year we're looking at 12 and 55%. So it's pretty comparable, and the rates are also pretty comparable for the number 1 position as well. So I would say arguably this change didn't have too much of an effect on the FPO field. I thought it was going to have a bit more of a change, but I'm happy to be proven wrong in this particular scenario. Moving one hole later on hole 10 is the first change we saw specifically for the MPO field, where you have, hole 10 is the hole that goes right up the hill to the castle, and it's a very, very long distance shot, and typically that hole has, you know, about a 20% or so birdie rate, and then a large par rate, and typically the largest par rate on the entire course, as it did last year at 70%, which is what I think they were trying to target this year, was to make that hole a little bit more gettable for people and, you know, flatten those numbers out a little bit. So instead of being like 20, 70, and 10, get it closer to that like 33, 33, 33, or, you know, however you want to call it, maybe like a 35, 35, 30, whatever. And it seems to be effective. Moving the hole up a little bit, adding that gap, did open up the birdie to more players, with the average birdie rate being in the 35% range. That's up 15%, and par moving down to 58%. I would call this, even though I really liked seeing the power throwers be given a hole where they could take advantage, I do like seeing the change here and what it did for just the overall score layout, and make it less of a hole that everyone's going to par, or the vast majority of players are going to par, and now something where birdie is definitely attainable for more players in the field. And I would imagine that the more we keep this position in future years, we're probably going to see that birdie rate climb closer to 40%, with the par rate coming down closer to 50%, which I think would be good overall for the hole itself. One more change we saw was the addition of a new pin position on hole 13 for both the MPO and the FPO. Additionally, hole 13 is another one of those classic 70% par rate, and that is tied with hole 10 for the MPO field. For the FPO, it is a rather difficult hole, coming out to about, you know, half a stroke over par last year, with very, very few ladies being able to birdie it. So the addition of the new pin position really made for, I think, an interesting circumstance where we actually saw, believe it or not, an ace on both the long and the short. Short for Cole Redolin, long for Eagle McMahon. I can't even describe how crazy of an ace the long position is, unless you've been there before and you've seen the hole. I mean, like, you can see it on camera, but it doesn't really quite do it justice. Being there in person, that ace is 1,000 times more incredible, like having been on that tee pad and having to have thrown down that fairway before. But I would say the introduction of the new pin position definitely made it for an interesting change up between rounds, where you have, you know, over on the MPO side, you have the men shooting just barely, you know, 0.03 strokes over par to the long position, and about a third of a stroke under par to the short position. So it made it really a good change, although, you know, it still played on the long position the same as it did last year at 68%, you know, almost 70% par rate, which it did in 2024. But adding that extra change for two of the rounds, I think made that hole a must-get when it was in the short position. So I really liked what they did there for that. And then for the FPO field, you know, we saw the same kind of thing where when it was in the short position, it definitely opened it up to about a quarter of the field was able to get the birdie. So I like the change on hole 13. Now, speaking of changes that are, you know, may not be liked so much, we have the big change to hole 17, which is the one that we really, really were excited to see how that would be affected, because traditionally, historically, hole 17 has been a pretty easy gettable hole for the MPO field, last year averaging 52% in birdies, which was, I believe, second only to, hole 8 had 65% birdies. Leading at birdie rate was number 5. But in terms of ease, probably one of the easiest holes on the course, one of the easier holes, probably one of the easier par 4s on the Pro Tour. And down the stretch, you know, they kind of wanted to see some more scoring separation built in, so they moved the tee pad way back, making the hole much more difficult. And so we had a 52% birdie rate, 38% par rate. That this year effectively was changed to an 11% birdie rate and a 50% par rate, with, you know, a pretty sizable number of players coming in at over par. 40% of players finishing at bogey or worse on the hole. So if the goal was to make that hole a real score separator, I think they accomplished that just fine, and they took it from being the third easiest hole on the course to being the second hardest hole on the course. So last year it averaged 0.4 strokes under par. This year it averaged 0.4 strokes over par. So that's almost an entire stroke correction in one direction. And not just the stroke correction, but also opening up a significant number of people to bogey or worse. Whereas last year, bogey or worse only happened 11% of the time. This year, 40% of the time, bogey or worse occurred on 17. So I like the change from a numbers perspective down the stretch. Is it still a really difficult hole? Yes. But I think even looking at it here to see that there were 11% of the field birdied it, I like it. I like that a lot. I think that's a perfectly fine spread. Let me know what you think down in the comments, whether or not you agree. Pros have their opinion, spectators have their opinion. I think from a stats and analysis perspective, having a difficult hole down the stretch like that can be very, very effective, because 16 is a hard hole to get a birdie on. You're rewarded big time if you do get the birdie. 17 is a very difficult hole, and then 18 is a big decision hole. I like that there. But that's the course in general. I think aside from those, it played as we always kind of expect Maple Hill to play, and it was a lot of fun to watch the players slice and dice Maple Hill this weekend. When we look at the actual scores for the FPO field, we talk about this every single episode, it feels like, for the last several weeks, is that all eyes were really on Silva, Holland, Own, and Missy, the four ladies kind of in that battle for Player of the Year candidacy. And coming out of the first round, Silva really puts down a dominant performance, shooting an 8 under par, which I believe would be the best round we would see on the course all weekend long, and comes out to a pretty commanding lead with Haley King close behind her and a few strokes back, Cadence Burge and Hannah Wynn. And it's great to see Haley King play well here, because we know she typically always does play well at Maple Hill. It's a good course, I believe, set up for her game, and with her not being able to play this much this year, this is a necessary event for her to make it into the Tour Championship. And we look down Holland Hanley at -2. We see Missy Gannon having a bit of a tough opening round. But moving into round 2, some of that definitely gets course corrected as Missy shoots a -8, same as Silva in the first round, to get herself all the way back up to tied for third with Kat Murch, as Holland also emerges with a 6 down to tie up with Silva, who shot even par. So Silva did the absolute flip-flop, which is kind of crazy to think about, that Silva shot a -8 in the mist, straight out of the Stephen King novel. I played in that myself earlier this year at the Cosmic Open, and let me tell you something, at Maple Hill, it's very tough when you can't see where you're landing at. But Holland Hanley shoots herself into a tie for first place with Silva, and Missy has the incredible 8 down with an ace on hole 7 to get herself into position on the lead card next to Kat Murch, only 3 strokes back of the lead. And we look down, we see a few other names. Hannah Wynn had a bit of a tough round. Haley King shot the +4 to kind of move herself back a little bit. Going into round 3, we see the leaderboard shaken up a little bit again, as Holland and Missy both shoot the -6. Haley King gets the -5 to bring herself back up in the lead card, and Silva shoots even again. So moving out to an early lead after the first round, but just failing to capitalize in rounds 2 and 3 to put herself in any kind of position, and now finding herself a total of 6 strokes back from Holland Hanley going into the final round. Missy being 3 strokes back and Haley being a total of 7 strokes back. We find ourselves in another position where Holland Hanley is out in the lead with all eyes on her. Can she convert and take down the win? And during the round, we kind of see Holland come out decently with, par on hole 1, a birdie on hole 2, and then it kind of gets off the rails as she triple bogeys hole 3. Just some unfortunate missed putts that really, really needed to go in. And then she kind of goes on a bit of a par stretch with some bogeys in between. It just kind of knocks herself out of the event. Meanwhile, Missy Gannon does the Missy Gannon thing, not really doing anything that I would say is overwhelmingly incredible, but just shooting consistent-ish disc golf, going par, par, birdie, par, par, bogey, birdie, and then just kind of being clean with pars and a couple birdies throughout the rest of the round. Nothing really to write home about, no -8 kind of round, but just watching her competitors struggle as Haley King shoots the 1 over par. Holland finishes the round at 4 over, tying with Silva, who shot 2 down. And I don't know who probably is kicking themselves more, Holland Handley with the blow up there from holes 3 to hole 8, or is it Silva Saarinen, who came out and shot 8 down in the first round and only managed to earn 2 more strokes across the next 3. But ultimately, Missy Gannon takes down the win. It's a big win for her, and I think really tips the scale in her favor for the Player of the Year conversation. And honestly, it's something that we have to pay attention to. When it comes to the qualifier then for the playoff, we saw the typical set of players go in. One of the things that we talked about last week, there were a few players who were kind of on the chopping block. The players who were not in at the time that I was kind of looking for would be Sofia Donica, Alexis Mandujano, and Rebecca Dawn. And looking at how they played, Sofia Donica played an incredible event, finishing in 7th place and earning herself a spot as the second wildcard position after Haley King, who finished in 4th place, obviously. So the two of them kind of knocked out that for themselves. And you kind of scroll down the leaderboard, and we see just a few players falling out of position. Alexis Mandujano unable to get it done. And I would say the biggest drop-off, Rebecca Dawn. It's unfortunate to see her just have a really, really rough round 4. I mean, she put down a couple decent first rounds. After round 3, she found herself in 15th place, needing to shoot decent, at +2 to get in. I believe the line she had to shoot was, so she was tied with Sophia at the time at +2. So Sophia and Rebecca Dawn kind of battling for that other wild card spot, and unfortunately, Sophia came out and she shot a -5 round, which really got the job done for her. And Rebecca Dawn, did not have the same kind of round. In fact, I'm having a hard time even finding her. Shot +6 in the final round, just not able to get the job done on her end. Hopping over to the MPO side of the aisle, we had quite a battle after the first round. Nathan Queen jumping out in the number 1 position with Simon Lizotte. Maple Hill is arguably probably his home course, although as much as these guys travel, what is a home course? Gannon Burr and Cole Radallen, who, not surprising to see him up there after his really stellar performance at GMC last weekend, kind of peaking at the right time during the year. Going in round 2, not the same kind of round for Nathan Queen. Unfortunately, kind of plays himself out of it early on. Gannon shoots the 10 down to put himself in solo first at 16 under. Not far behind him, tied at second, is Ricky Wysocki, who shoots the 12 under par after a not so great 2 down in the first round. Really showcases the fact that he doesn't really matter what his ankle feels like. He's going to go out there and get the job done. Cole Radallen tied with him with an 8 under par second round, and Casey White hopping up there. Also another person who you could arguably say this is their home Pro Tour course. And Paul Kranz not far behind. Paul also being someone who really had a good event at GMC. So seeing Paul Kranz and Cole Radallen, something must be in the air with the two of them, as they're really, really putting down some solid rounds. Great to see Matty O at 9 under par, not really within contention for the lead, but trying to really secure that spot in the Tour Championship for himself. Coming into round 3, we kind of have the things flip again. Cole Radallen shooting the 12 down to Gannon's 10, tying them at the top together at 26 under par, with Ricky shooting a respectable 8 down, being 4 strokes back, and Paul Kranz hopping over Casey White and a few other people to get himself at the 4th spot, 10 strokes back from Cole and Gannon. So not really in the event, but at this point playing well enough that he should find himself making the Tour Championship and really peaking at the right time this season. Because I tell you what, a Paul Kranz that just is coming off his highest finish ever at 4th at GMC, getting a good finishing position here, and then On top of that, let's say he finishes top 10 at the Tour Championship, he is going to be seeing himself a nice paycheck. And in the fourth round, it did not disappoint. The battle came early and often. Paul Kranz, not really in it, unfortunately, kind of falling away from the pace of his card. He ends up shooting even to finish the round and falls down to 8th place. Still a really incredible event for him. We see 2 10 downs coming from Isaac Robinson and Luke Taylor to pop up in a 4th and 5th place, respectively. But the real story is the battle between Cole, Gannon, and Ricky. Gannon starts off the round with an unfortunate bogey on hole 1 and kind of gets off to a back and forth battle as Cole and Gannon just continue to flip back and forth between the lead, hole over hole over hole. Cole Redolin has a slightly, arguably a cleaner round with, shooting 8 down with 0 bogeys, whereas Gannon shoots the 7 down but has 3 bogeys, so 10 birdies to Gannon's card but 3 mistakes. And the back and forth battle goes, and we kind of find our way into hole 17, which is the one we talked about. And Gannon is now, at this time, tied with Cole. And Cole steps up on the tee pad before Gannon gets to go, and Cole throws a dime of a shot. Absolutely beautiful out the gap. Probably couldn't place it in a better spot for his game. Gannon hits one of the first available trees and kicks into the woods, and now has to try to save the impossible par. Gets out into the field and finds himself throwing his 3rd shot before Cole even throws his 2nd. And Gannon puts it up there and gives himself a look to save the par. Cole throws a beautiful shot, pretty much securing his birdie for himself. Gannon misses the putt. And now, with a 2-stroke swing, Cole has 2 strokes on Gannon and is now in a position where all he really has to do is par hole 18, and that will be enough, provided Gannon doesn't throw in. Cole has a great tee shot. Gannon has a great tee shot. Gannon is first to go between them, and he sticks the island. Cole steps up to his shot, and everyone's kind of talking about how all he has to do now is lay up beyond the tree that's kind of in the middle of the fairway, lay up into the green, make a putt, and end it all. He kind of does what a lot of people were, I would say, pretty shocked about. I'm pretty shocked about, and he goes for the green. And, I know that the argument is that's the shot that felt comfortable. I think personally it's not the smartest shot in that scenario. At least I don't think it is, considering that, all he has to do is par. But he says it felt good in his game, and honestly, a little bit higher and it would have been out of bounds, a little bit lower and it would have been out of bounds, and we'd have been looking at a whole different ball game where he has to make the putt from the drop zone to secure the win and get up and down for the bogey to go into a tiebreaker, which with Gannon, I don't know that I ever want to be in a tiebreaker with Gannon, but just a really, really crazy way to end it. Cole sticks the green, lays up under the basket, takes his win. I believe it's his first win since Ledgestone in 2023, and just a really dramatic and emotional moment on the green for Cole Redolin. Hopping over to the qualifier conversation, this gets kind of spicy because we looked at the players who we kind of thought were on the bubble. You got guys like Austin Turner, Joseph Anderson, Matty O, Silas Schultz, Ulibarri, Robert Burridge, Zach Nash. And when you go down the list, we see that, not a lot of them did very well here. Not well at all. And I don't believe any of them actually made it into the event, into the Tour Championship. It was not a good finish for that group, although some were a little bit close to the wild card spots. But the wild card spots going to Nestori Tukkanen, who came in 10th, Lori Lettinen, who came in 11th, Chris Clemens, who came in 11th as well, and a playoff for the final wild card spot between Rasmus Sakaripi and Harry Chase. And this is kind of crazy because if you know what happened, it's a little unfortunate for our man Harry Chase. Harry played a solid event and found himself in a position on hole 18 where all he needed to do was par the hole. And a par on the hole would have got him everything he needed to make it into the Tour Championship in the wild card position. And he goes for it from the fairway, from far back on the fairway, ends up taking the bogey, goes into a playoff with Rasmus, and on his upshot into the green, it just jumps out of bounds, and Rasmus hits the putt to send himself to the Tour Championship and Harry Chase home with a lot of questions on whether or not he should have tried to understand the scoring app a little bit better in the closing stretch. So tough look for Harry Chase. He's a great player. He's young. He's definitely going to be making it to the Tour Championship in future years. And honestly, big shout out to Rasmus Sokaripi and the Finnish squad as 3 Finns take 3 of the 4 wildcard spots, and also good to see a resident lefty in Chris Clemens making it into the Tour Championship as well. But ultimately, it was a wild weekend with lots of storylines and just a good time. I love watching the MVP Open. It's probably the Pro Tour course. Not probably, it is the Pro Tour course that I've played more than any other. So when they are on that course and they find themselves off the fairway or in different spots, I can remember what it was like to be in that position. And there's just something really visceral about that. Maple Hill is probably the only course on tour that you can go to 6 months out from the event. You can go there in March and you can play the exact MPO layout they played this past weekend, and you just don't get that with anywhere else. Love to see it. Let me know what you think. How do you rate the MVP Open in terms of a tournament? Do you like watching it? Are you a little exhausted during this part of the season? Do you care about who's making it to the Tour Championship? Let me know in the comment section down below. I appreciate each and every one of you watching these episodes. And make sure, if you like what you heard, to like the video, hit the subscribe button. It's a great way to support the growth of the channel. And until next time, make sure you go out in there and you play some disc golf, or you're watching some disc golf. This has been Understable Discourse and Chain Reaction.